Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Homeschooling has seen a significant rise in popularity in recent years as more and more families seek alternatives to traditional schooling. According to the National Home Education Research Institute, the number of homeschool students in the United States has steadily increased over the past decade, reaching an estimated 2.5 million students in 2021. This growing trend reflects a desire among parents to take an active role in their children's education and to tailor it to their individual needs and values. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with a renowned psychologist, author, and homeschooling advocate, Dr. Catherine Reed. Dr. Reed holds a PhD in developmental psychology and has extensive experience in the field of education. She homeschooled her own two daughters from kindergarten through the 11th grade using the Waldorf curriculum, a unique and holistic teaching approach inspired by the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner. In her book, which draws insightful parallels between the Waldorf method and parenting, Dr. Reed shares her profound journey and the invaluable lessons she learned along the way. So join us as we explore the world of homeschooling through the lens of the Waldorf method, discovering how this approach fosters creativity, emotional intelligence, and a deep connection between parent and child. And throughout this episode, we're going to uncover the principles of the practices that make homeschooling with the Waldorf method such a transformative experience. Dr. Reed will shed light on the benefits, the challenges, and practical insights gained from her own homeschooling journey, providing valuable guidance for parents considering this educational path. So welcome, Dr. Catherine Reed.
Hello, nice to be here.
Wonderful. Can you share with us your personal journey and just your decision to homeschool your daughters, and then even how you selected the Waldorf curriculum, and just what factors were there that influenced your choice?
Yeah, it's a little bit unusual sequence maybe, because I found out about the Waldorf schools before I had children.
Okay.
So I wasn't thinking about my own children at that point. I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll have children, but basically a friend of mine turned out to have gone to a Waldorf school in Europe, and he gave me a book called Education Towards Freedom. So, and that was written in the 70s by some English Waldorf teachers. And it was very beautifully illustrated with the children's schoolwork and the school buildings. And it was a description of how those schools are. And I read it and I was just amazed. It was nothing like anything I'd ever encountered before. Myself having gone to public schools, or, my education, my graduate education in developmental psychology, which was not focused on education. I mean, I wasn't really learning about education at that point, but I just hadn't come across anything like these Waldorf schools. And I thought, oh, this looks good. So I kind of decided for the school before I had children. And then we had our first daughter, and I still wasn't thinking about school exactly very much. I just had it in the back of my mind, oh, probably a Waldorf school. And, then we moved to Connecticut, and she gets to be 2.5. And I'm kind of thinking a little bit more about it. And I'm going, okay, let's find the Waldorf school. Well, there was no Waldorf school. And, they weren't on every block. I mean, I never looked into the actual details. I just assumed they'd be there. They weren't. So we got involved in a play group that was run by someone who'd gone to a Waldorf school. So we're starting to kind of get into the rhythm and the feeling of it, and the, little songs and rhymes and seasonal activities and seasonal festivals that we got into. Then we had the second child. We moved to Southern California. And yes, there is a Waldorf school, but it's 45 minutes away on the freeway. So at that point, the play group was the contact. And this is where, we went into the play group, we meet other parents, children the same age. The play group took place in a kindergarten room in the Waldorf school. So I saw what the kindergarten room was like, and we basically, the play group, a Waldorf play group, is a lot like a kindergarten. It's just geared to younger children. And we, we got to the point where the older one, it was going to be time for her to go into kindergarten. So I wasn't thinking about it. I just had put it off. I kind of was in denial because I knew we weren't going to move. I knew the school was still going to be 45 minutes away. And I was just more and more impressed with the feeling and the mood and the atmosphere, and also how the children were treated, that they were really seen as very, very important. The children were very important. And it was like they were a treasure. There was something very, very special about the children. And this is the focus. And so it's not that we're trying to make them into something. It's that we're trying to see who they are, but gradually, like helping it happen. That was kind of what I was sensing and really valuing. So
I like that. So it sounds like the feeling and the way the children were treated and seemed to be valued is what especially resonated with you.
yes.
Was there anything about the content of anything that they were teaching the children that also made you feel that the Waldorf approach really might be best for your children?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's very seasonal, so they're very much connected with nature. Nature is an underlying level that's very, very important also all the time. So the children are always being connected to nature one way or another. They're outdoors a lot, so they're just in direct contact and direct experience for themselves, but also it's brought into the play group or the classroom or whatever with songs and poems and artwork. It's all furthering this connection with nature, which I just thought was very important. It just struck me as very important for the children, for the adults, for the environment, that we be connected to it, that we are aware of it, that we feel a responsibility, and the children then just kind of grow up into that way of being.
So when did you make the leap that, well, it's too far to take them to this school, 45 minutes.
Right.
I'm going to do it at home myself.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I put it off till the last minute. I think it was August. Of when she would have had to have gone into the school in the fall. And I finally said, I've got to face this. And I had to say to myself, can I teach kindergarten at home? And I thought, yes, I can. I've been doing the play group. I know some music. I have a wooden flute. I know how to do some handwork. I can get the art materials, the watercolor paints, the crayons, the modeling wax, the beeswax. I can get those things. And so it was a question of, okay, I decided myself, yes, I can do it. Then I have to say to my husband, can we do it?
Yes.
Can we do it? Because it was going to require him spending more time with the children to free me up to prepare for the next day's school. So it was going to change our daily schedule and our daily life. He would have to come home from work by a certain time so he could spend time with them. We'll all have dinner together. Then he'll take them to bed while I can get ready for the next day. I had to memorize songs and verses and, movement activities and fairy tales. I mean, it's like, okay, I can do this, but I can't do it by myself. And, we thought about it. We didn't just make a snap decision. We thought about it. And then he said, yes, I can do that. I can come home early and I can take them in the evening. And so we said, okay, all right, we're going to do it. So
that's awesome. And so I wonder, did you take it as a year by year thing? Like, we're going to do it this year, then we'll see what happens.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. It was a commitment for a year, and that was all. We'll see how it happens. And we said, we'll make a judgment next spring or beginning of next summer about whether that was the right thing.
Okay.
Whether that was the right thing for the child. and what is going to be the right thing for the next year.
Mhm.
That's what we said. And that's what we did. That's what we did every year.
Oh, every year, huh?
Every year. We only went year by year the whole time.
Oh, okay. Because I didn't know if maybe, I don't know, second grade, say, for example, you didn't say, oh, I got this. Yeah, we're in it for the long haul.
No, I didn't. What I said to myself was, I'm open to doing that. If
Okay.
that seems like the right thing. If that seems like the right thing year by year, I'm open to doing it. But I wasn't saying I knew, that it would have to be done.
Right, right. Now, I didn't make the decision to homeschool my children, but I did a lot of work with them at home because when our sons were about 13 months old, I have twin sons. I can't remember whether we talked about that, but I have twin sons who are now college graduates. But one of our sons at that time was diagnosed with developmental delays. And so through the course of him seeing different specialists like speech and language therapist, occupational therapist, I learned a lot. And so I had a marketing background. So I really got into the visuals and the communication and presentation and all of that. And so, in that respect, my professional background kind of helped me to get into that. So I was wondering about your background in developmental psychology and how that informed your understanding and how you applied the Waldorf teaching approach with your children.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that question, and I have to say, I think it sort of goes the other direction. I think my experience with the Waldorf curriculum and Waldorf teaching has taught me more about developmental psychology.
Okay.
Developmental psychology taught me about, teaching at home and using a curriculum. It kind of goes the other way, because when I was studying developmental psychology and teaching at the university and doing research, I was concentrating on language development, and yeah, that's all fine. I mean, it's a complicated field, and it's challenging, and it's wonderful, and I love doing it. But it didn't tell me anything about how it would be to be a parent of individual children. It really didn't teach me anything about that. So once I have my children and I realize, okay, I'm going to stay home and actually raise them myself, I kind of stepped away from gradually stepped away from the academic work. And then I went and immersed myself really in this completely other approach to child development. So Steiner's understanding about child development is what's behind the Waldorf curriculum. And what he has to say about development, very different from what I was getting in my academic training. I mean, very different. Because one thing is, it focuses on awareness and consciousness, how that changes with human development. It's in the very beginning, and then these kind of radical transformations that happen at certain points in different ages as a person grows up, and really the whole course of their life. There are different kind of moments. It's not just a linear process. And so his understanding of human consciousness and how it changes with development is what's behind the curriculum, and it is the reason that certain things are done or certain content is given at a certain time with children. Because I think we talked about this before, it's not the attitude that they're a blank slate and we're just pouring things into them, that they somehow have to learn certain facts, they have to learn, certain skills, they have to be socialized, they start out as nothing and we have to make them into something. Okay, that's one way of looking at child development. But his is really almost the opposite. They already are becoming something very specific, but it's a long road to get there. They're not just little adults. They're very different from adults, the younger ones. And then even until they're 25, they're actually pretty different from adults. And in our culture, we tend to think like, well, once they get to be 17, 18, they're pretty much adults. No. And so, so this whole approach, and this is how I entered this study of child development, was through the Waldorf curriculum. That's how I entered it. And I found myself in a very different world. And I think I learned a lot more there than I did in developmental psychology. Although I still work in developmental psychology, so I'm not belittling it, but it's just very different.
We'll be right back after this. If you're looking to reach a massive audience of parents and caregivers, then look no further than ProPix by the Parenting 411, the ultimate marketing program designed to skyrocket your brand to new heights. With ProPix, we've created 3 incredible packages to suit your marketing needs and budget. So let's take a look. First up is our social starter package. You'll receive a stunning graphic promo piece, plus we'll also feature your brand on the Parenting 411 Instagram page. It's the perfect way to make a memorable first impression and get parents buzzing about your business. Now, if you're ready to level up, our Parenting Pro package is where it's at. You'll enjoy all the benefits of the social starter package, plus more awesome benefits, including exposure on the Parenting 411 podcast, which reaches parents in more than 22 countries each week. But wait, there's more. For those seeking the pinnacle of marketing power, our Elite Exposure package is the way to go. You'll get even more exposure across our platform, including thousands of followers and connections on LinkedIn. Get ready to dominate the airwaves and establish yourself as the go-to resource for families everywhere. Take advantage of ProPix by the Parenting 411 today and unlock unparalleled marketing opportunities for your business. But I should tell you that prices are set to increase on November 1st, so act now. ProPix by the Parenting 411 is your passport to the hearts and minds of parents. Visit ProPixbyP411.com. Join us today and watch the magic happen. And we're back with the Parenting 411. I can agree that I learned a lot about child development too, just because of what I needed to learn to support my son at home. And I just learned so much about it. That's really why I shifted to this career, because I was in corporate marketing before and thought surely I'd be going back.
Right.
And, God kind of directed me in a different way. So, and I'm happy for it. This has been interesting. I've been really learning a lot all of these years that I've been doing it.
Yes.
Now, I know that something else that you liked about the Waldorf Method too was, and I can imagine it's this concern for children and how they're evolving and all of that, that you see a lot of parallels between the Waldorf teaching method and parenting. And I know you talk about that in your book, The Genius of Home. So talk about some of the parallels you see.
Right. Well, all right. Let me start with the kindergarten. What I say in the book, the kindergarten, a Waldorf kindergarten, is a healthy family life. That is what it is. It's a rhythmic week, a rhythmic day, an awareness of the seasons. It's adults working with whatever they're doing that includes children, that can include these young children. So singing together, talking together, moving together, and then maybe telling a story, and then cutting up the vegetables for the snack and having the snack, and then tidying up afterwards. And then maybe, some final activity, and then tidying up the classroom, and then saying goodbye. This is a family life. It's a way of family life where the day is structured by the adult, but the adult is including the children in the activities as much as they possibly can, no matter what the age of the child is, no matter how little or, capable they are. Mm-hmm. And so the child at that age, at kindergarten, their main what would you say, inclination is to imitate, and they're extremely capable imitators. Extremely. So it's almost they don't have control over it. They just do it. They just so that means it's very, very important what you provide for them to imitate.
Yes.
how you speak, how you move, they're going to imitate all of it. And it's automatic almost. And it is shaping them. All of this imitation is shaping them down to the bodily level. It's really at all levels, it's shaping them. It's a tremendous responsibility for the parent. And, you can't be aware of that all the time, but you can have these kind of like guiding ideas. Oh, the day should be rhythmic. I should start out and end it the same way every day. I should maybe do something in the middle of the day that's the same. Let's keep something the same about the days so that, so that everybody knows what's going to happen at that time. And that's just helpful for everybody, because then you don't have to be spending as much time wondering what's going on. And, the children don't either. They know what's going on. And they can be kind of stable and feel, I don't know, held, And so that continues through every grade in the Waldorf School. The Waldorf School goes through high school, grade 12 in the United States. It goes in that further year in Europe. And rhythmic days every time. There's a set rhythm to the day. And the way that changes with the children, as they get older. Of course, you don't have the same rhythm for a kindergartner that you have for a teenager, but there is a rhythm. It's stable. You know what's going to happen. And the other thing about the curriculum is you teach topics in blocks. So if we get to the point where you're into the grades, even in first grade, there are certain topics. So there's the letters, the numbers, fairy tales, and nature stories. And those are taught in blocks, which means that you would only do one topic for 3 or 4 weeks at a time.
Okay.
And you're not thinking about anything else. You're immersed into that. You're working with it. The teacher is giving out more at the beginning of that period. The students having to do more at the end, because in the Waldorf School, the students make their own books. They're called main lesson books. And the academic block is called a main lesson. So first grade, you give a main lesson in the letters, and we're talking about just the capital letters.
Okay.
And you don't do them all at once. You work into it artistically, you work into it with experience from nature so that they see something in nature that you can then gradually form into the form of a letter. And, like we had, we were at the beach. So I'm looking for a C. I know I have to do a C. I'm looking all over for a C, and there's a crab. So, the crab's pincers can be like that. So they see the crab, and then we come home and I do a simple drawing of a crab that they can copy. And then you gradually, we go this way, you get the C. And so that's an example. And it just works that way, more complicated each year. So they then, even in the first grade, are putting their drawing and their writing into their own plain paper book. You give them the book with blank pages. And they do that through high school. Calculus, they get into projective geometry, algebra, anything. They're making their main lesson book on that topic. They do not use textbooks. They're not seeing textbooks. They're seeing primary sources, and the teacher is presenting primary sources, and they're writing their own material and putting it into their book.
So there's a guidebook though for you, I suppose, in terms of developmentally and cognitively, this is the kind of thing you should be teaching right now.
There's a lot of material on that.
Okay.
That's why it's called a curriculum. There is a curriculum.
Okay.
But it's not a question of having, Xeroxed sheets where you're filling in the blanks. It's not that.
Right.
It's giving guidance, and there are many at this point. These materials have been written by Waldorf teachers, who have been working. These schools were started in the early 1900s. So since then, there have been Waldorf teachers. There were the lectures that Steiner gave to those early teachers. People, of course, are still working with those. And then there's writing that those early teachers have done and later teachers have done. There are many, many Waldorf schools now, many more than really all around the world. And there's material. So there's quite a few English speaking, countries that have Waldorf schools. And these people have put together books And my book is actually a part of it,
Oh, I'm sure it is.
because I'm saying, here's a resource for this particular lesson, and here are the lessons that go with the grades. I mean, I'm not doing it to be a manual. It's not a
Sure.
manual, and I'm not doing it in the detail that these other teachers have, published these books. But what I'm doing is giving a kind of overview, and part of the book, I'm giving an overview of what's
Sure.
happening in these different grades. And
Mm-hmm.
I give resource materials where
Mm-hmm.
they can find, more details.
Now, what kinds of challenges, if any, did you encounter while homeschooling, and if any, with the curriculum, and how did you work those out?
Yeah, challenges. Well, when we started, homeschooling was not as frequent as it is now. And Waldorf homeschooling was also much less frequent. The main attitude when we started, the main attitude in the Waldorf schools was that you couldn't get a Waldorf education unless you went to an institutional school. That was just the attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a little bit bucking the system and a little bit not going along with the
Conventional wisdom.
conventional wisdom. Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was saying, no, I can use the Waldorf curriculum at home. And the thing is, I should say, in that first year in kindergarten, by the middle of that year, a Waldorf teacher training institute had started near me, where I could start taking classes from Waldorf teachers, Waldorf teachers. And these were classes in kindergarten and early childhood, like the early grades. So I started taking those classes. And then what happens is I just continued taking classes really almost the whole time I was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taking classes from other Waldorf teachers, and I was consulting with other Waldorf teachers that were teaching in schools. Yeah. So I have to say there were definite exceptions. There were people who were just willing to really help me, even though that's what I was doing, homeschooling. They were, and they taught the grades before, they had experience. So, and then in the summertime, they provide courses for teachers. It's not exactly a full teacher training, but it's like to get you ready for a particular grade. So you come for a week and you work with a Waldorf teacher, and they tell you what they have done in that grade before. And they go over material, and they go over how to do it and why, and that's all in a week. So I did a lot of those too. Every summer I was doing the one I needed for the next, coming year.
Wow.
Yeah. And then once it got to the high school teacher training, that is a little bit more involved and detailed. And, that was a three-year program that was mostly in the summertime, but then you had to continue some work during the year. And I did that. I did the full teacher training for high school, and I majored in physics and minored in English. So I did all the work that was, required for that. But at the same time, I'm getting the background. I'm getting all the lessons.
Right.
It's like, these are the topics for this grade. These are the topics for this grade. This is how I taught it. And I'm telling you, I took detailed notes. So that's kind of how I was tracking along with them. I was staying ahead of them, getting the training that's involved, that's available for teachers. So it's a little bit of a challenge that way. You have to, it's a huge education for the teacher. And you just have to be able to devote, I guess, the time and energy to that. It was a huge education for me. It's one challenge, sometimes there was some challenge from other parents who weren't homeschooling, like, kind of implying that we weren't doing the right thing. But I was using my own intuition, and I really was sure that it was the right thing, as long as we just went year by year.
Right.
And I'll just give you an example. So after first grade, and this is where the parents who put their children into the school and were not necessarily positive about homeschool, were a little bit of a challenge. But at the end of that year, we were back at the Waldorf school campus. This was in Southern California. For something, I don't know, I can't remember if it was playgroup or a festival or whatever, but my daughter, who had just finished first grade, was coming across the yard, and one of the teachers there, one of the kindergarten teachers who had known her before she had that first grade, saw her. And later she told me, that teacher, she said, "Oh, Claire looked so good today. She looked like she was just completely herself.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, that's so good.
Right.
Is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Say that about the child at the end of the school year, then it was good. You know?
That is good.
Yeah.
You talked about it a little bit earlier in terms of your husband working with you in partnership on this. So let's give parents a feel for how homeschooling can impact home life for the parents as well as the children.
Well, it did have a big impact on our home life, but I think it improved it. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it way improved it, because then I had a rhythm for the school days, but I also had a rhythm for the week.
Mm-hmm.
Monday was nature day. Monday was nature exploring day. So that was a school day. I was clear, this is a school day, but we're going out in nature and that's what we're going to do. And they just explored, and I did not teach them. I didn't talk to them. I just stayed with them, and they
Mm-hmm.
did what they wanted to do. And then we'd have a little lunch, and then we'd go to the library or the bookstore. That was Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Every school week, they knew that was the first school day. And it was a really good transition because you're doing something that's, it's enlivening and it's interesting, but it's not demanding.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting ready to go into the more demanding part where you have to pay attention and you have to really try and you have to focus. And that's the mornings for the next 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Academic work is only in the morning. Then in the afternoon, it's handwork, artwork, other kinds of lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So there's those 3 days. Then the last day of the week is also school, but again, it's going out and having lessons with other people. And then Saturday and Sunday, no school at all. No talk about school, nothing to do with school, and then back into the Monday that has to do with the transition into these, and that goes on for the whole year. And so it meant that by the end of the day, we could be tired, but we were not drained.
Mm. And, I like what you talked about, like for Saturday and Sunday, no school, and you didn't talk about school. I think that was something that I always worried about because of the things that I did. And it sounds very similar in terms of making sure that my children knew what was going to happen each day. Like I had, pictures up of the people they were going to see, the places we were going to go, and all of those things. And because people would come over and see a lot of what I was doing, they were like, "Why don't you homeschool your children?" And I was like, "Oh, no way. I'm not qualified. There's no way. I would feel horrible if they graduated 12th grade and just didn't have everything they needed. I just didn't think I could do it." And then I didn't feel like there was this major need. I was in a good school district. There were good schools around. Because I always said, listen, if we lived somewhere off the grid and there weren't good schools there, I'd be doing it. But that's not where I am. So I just, it just wasn't in my heart to do it. It was just to make sure they were with the right people that could educate them.
Right.
And so, another thing I worried about is when will this, I'll be on 24 hours, because between being their teacher and being their mom, but it sounds like you had, it's the rhythm of the day and it's really a system. And so that wasn't the case for you, it sounds like.
It's true because my husband, when he took over, I was not on with the children.
Okay.
And I said, I need this time to myself because I've got to get this lesson ready,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, memorizing, practicing the instrument, writing out whatever it is I'm going to teach, whatever that preparation was, I needed to do it. And I was doing it by myself. So, I had some time to myself. He had time to himself early in the morning because he was a really morning person. He got up very early and went to work very early before even anybody else was there.
Mm-hmm.
So opposite ends of the day, we have some time to ourselves. And,
right.
And then we have the rhythm that we have during the day. And then on the weekends, we're doing what we want to do as a family. So,
Right.
We're going hiking, we're getting together with other people. I mean, this, I guess, kind of leads into the question of the social life, if you're
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Yes,
yeah,
because a lot of people wonder about that
yeah,
from the outside looking in.
yeah, Yeah, and the social life can be very, very rich because basically we always ended up working with other families that were homeschooling. So those families became very close. The mothers and fathers and children as a group all became very close. Those other parents were basically our colleagues,
Sure.
whether, the mothers were teaching, the fathers were supporting the family in their various ways, and the children were the various ages. So we have a wide age range in our group, and we have people that are working together. The mothers were studying together. The mothers were organizing festivals together. The classes and families did plays. We did a play for each class each year, and we cooperated. So like my children were in their plays, their children were in our,
Right.
and the adults had to be in the plays too, because you need the people. And so it was a very rich social life. I kind of miss it.
I know what you mean. I obviously didn't homeschool, but I miss that community of parents, especially from elementary school. When our children moved on and went off to their different middle schools or whatever, I miss the parents a lot.
Yeah.
Now, can you share some memorable experiences or even success stories from your journey with your daughters, like where it really affirms that this was a good family decision? We'll be right back after this. Are you a parent looking to unlock your potential in raising confident, capable, and courageous children? Well, look no further. Join us at the upcoming Parent and Purpose Summit Back to School Edition, where parenting experts from around the world will come together to share their wisdom and insights. I'm Carol Maletta, founder of the Parenting 411. This summit is your opportunity to gain essential skills and tools to become the parent you've always aspired to be. Over 5 incredible days, we'll dive deep into topics like positive discipline, effective communication, mental health, self-care, school readiness, and more. An attendee from our last summit told us, "This summit changed my parenting game. I feel more confident and connected with my children than ever before." So secure your seat at the Parent and Purpose Summit today. Visit parentandpurposesummit2023.com. That's parentandpurposesummit2023.com. And click the registration button to join us on this transformative journey. The Parent and Purpose Summit, where intentional parenting begins. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
Yeah, well, as I said, we kind of just reevaluated and made another decision each year in spring or beginning of summer, and that went through grade 11. And I never gave homework, I never gave grades, I never gave tests. My older daughter, she was the firstborn when she got into 10th grade. She said, and at this point they really were mostly around other children who had homeschool. And it was actually Waldorf homeschool, this group of families. Everybody having Waldorf homeschool. But she said to me, I want tests and grades. And I said, okay, I'll give you some tests, So I made tests and I graded them. Like, okay. And then the next year, 11th grade, well, she didn't need that anymore. She wasn't interested in that anymore. And the younger one never asked for it. So okay. And then they both decided, I don't know exactly how, that they didn't want to finish at home. They wanted to finish at an institutional school.
Okay.
And so they each went into a school for 12th grade, different schools. The first one went to a small prep school that was near us, day school. And the younger one went actually into a Waldorf school for their 12th grade. She had to go somewhere else and live with another family to do that. But she finished at a Waldorf school. And they both, I think that transition is probably rough, even if you go through the 12th grade and then just go into college, in homeschool, because it's such a big change. It's such a big change, being with so many other people all the time, and, having so many different adults as part of the group. And especially in the prep school, the schedule was just constantly changing. There was nothing really, there was no good rhythm to that. They were constantly changing even what period of the day was what topic. I mean, I don't even I don't know why they were doing that. But in any case, and then there's a lot of homework, and then there's, pressure to be in sports and the whole thing. So I would say they did well. I mean, in terms of the academics, they did well, and they had friends and they graduated. It was just stressful, time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they both went to college, and they both went on after college. So, and they both are doing what they really want to do, which
That's good.
I think that's the success.
Right, because a lot of people don't figure that out until much later.
Yeah, yeah,
They've already gone to college, studied something that they ultimately aren't going to use.
yeah.
So, yes.
My older daughter, from the time she was 7 years old, she said she wanted to be a vet.
Okay.
And she is a vet. She went to Cornell Vet School, and she's an equine vet. So she's on her path, basically, I think.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And the younger one just finished a second master's in counseling degree in counseling, and she's doing art therapy. She's an artist.
Mm.
And that is what she wants to do. I feel that was my responsibility, both as a parent and a teacher. This is what it wraps clearly here, that they have an intention. They have something they came here to do.
Yes, yes.
I am helping
Purpose.
that. Yes, they have purpose, and I am supporting them in carrying that out, being able to stay on that path. And I guess I'd say that's the success. They feel that they are doing what they came here to do.
That's beautiful.
Well, they're at least getting a good start. Yeah.
Now let's talk about something that isn't quite as fun, and that is, dealing with state and local regulations and all of that. Talk a bit about that and what you had to do in interacting with them, because, in your case, they ultimately did enter either a school system, or even if it was a private school, they had certain standards. So how did you prepare along the way to show them that, my children have been working all along and learning?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. And what I would say is the regulations and the laws are different state by state. So I can't make general statements. If someone's homeschooling, they have to check in their own state what the laws are. When I was in California, it was completely legal. And in fact, it was supported by the state. You could get money from the state for your homeschool. If you had state teachers come in and look at your work, and they thought it was good, they would okay it. And you could have funds for materials for your school. That was a high level of support.
You're right.
Even and this was quite a while ago. This was in California. Then we moved to Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania, it was illegal.
Illegal.
And it may still be, I'm not sure, because what I did, they may say that you're required to register with your local public school and have teachers there work with you. And some of our families did do that, but I didn't want to do that because they were requiring standardized tests. And I didn't think that standardized testing was healthy for children.
Okay.
I didn't think that they should be subjected to that. And I didn't think they had to be. So I actually found an alternative, and there was a school not within drive. I mean, it was an hour and a half away, so we could get there, but we couldn't go to school there. But that school had a homeschool program. So it was an accredited school in Pennsylvania, and the teachers were accredited Pennsylvania state teachers, but they had a homeschool program.
Okay.
You could enroll for very little money. It was like $350 a year. You could enroll in their homeschool program, and that meant that the teachers met with you and the children at the beginning of the year and heard what your plan was. And at the end of the year, they looked at the materials that the children had done, and they checked off the forms, the state required forms.
Gotcha.
Saying, they have done this, they have done this, they have done this. And in our case, the teachers at the end of the year, when they looked at what the children had done, they looked at their work, their academic work, their artistic work, etc. They were very impressed. They just, wow, okay, this is good. And got the forms. And they had a day school also, not just the homeschool program. And in their day school, they didn't give any grades. So even in their own school, there were no grades. So when the girls went into high school, then they start to have a high school transcript because these teachers are checking off what we did and putting it in
Okay.
a high school transcript and just saying no grades, no grades, because they didn't use grades in that school.
Right. Right.
And so it fit, we found a school that fit with us, that we could
That's good.
within, sort of within the state requirements.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were just lucky that way. But there's another resource too. The Southern Poverty Law Center also doesn't require a lot of money to join it, and they support homeschooling. So we did use their legal advice a couple of times.
Oh, okay.
They will provide legal advice for not much money to support homeschooling.
That's good to know. That's very good to know. Thanks for sharing that. So in general, what are some tips that you think parents should consider if they want to go down that road toward homeschooling?
Well, homeschooling or Waldorf homeschooling?
Both.
Well, homeschooling is very general. There's lots of different ways to do it. So I would say, if you're just thinking about, like, if the child's really young and you're just thinking about homeschooling,
Right.
then it might be a good idea to find out who in your area, who around you is doing homeschooling, and find out how they're doing it and see whether any of that fits with you, with your values and your goals and, your family and how you see things.
Mm-hmm.
Just find who's doing it and then find out. And of course, now these days, it's a lot easier to do that because everybody's online somehow. So,
Yes.
you can find out there's huge homeschooling groups. There's lots of different reasons to do it. There's lots of different reasons to do it, and lots of different kind of philosophies behind the various different ways of doing it. So I would say you just have to narrow it down somehow. You have to figure out what fits for you, and then find other people who are doing it and just coordinate with them, whether they're just online and they're a long ways away, but you have, some kind of Zoom communication, or whether you find people that are right around you. It's a question of communicating with other people that are doing it.
And so what would you say some of the benefits? As you said, there are a lot of good reasons to homeschool. What are some of the things or the benefits that you see for families and children? And this is just homeschooling in general, just the idea of taking on that responsibility. What do you see for parents and children?
Well, I guess I have to say I pretty much have to go by my own experience, because I haven't done any kind of general overview, of homeschooling. I didn't do it as a research project. I just made the decision about Waldorf and went in that direction. So I'll just have to go from my own experience. But basically, I think the effect that it had for the families, was that I think the parents got a little bit closer, because you have to work together to do it. Whoever the parents are, they have to work together to do it. One can't just kind of absent themselves. Even if you split the work up completely, you're still both involved, and you have to both be involved in the decision, I think. And that brings the two adults together, because they're working on something together, which isn't always the case. Family, you don't always work out that the adults can work together on something. And then beyond that, the children are very just involved in the family. They're just very involved in the family. I could differentiate myself as teacher and myself as parent. I did that from the beginning, because I said which days were school. And when it was school, I was the teacher.
Right.
And when first grade started, very first day of first grade, I always rang a bell and shook their hands at the door of the classroom. And my older daughter, this is her first grade, first day. So she's had kindergarten with me, but now it's like she knows this is a grade. This is really a big step.
Right.
She took her little sister back to the bedroom and got them dressed in nice dresses, and came down the hallway when I rang the bell. And I shook her hand. I said, "Good morning, Claire." And she looked up at me, "Good morning, teacher." And I thought, it's working. I am the teacher. And then
Right.
on those days and in that space, the classroom, because creating the space is another whole topic, and that's in the book too.
Hmm.
In that space, I'm the teacher. And
Hmm.
whatever the teacher is to the child at that age, I am. But then I was very clear, this is the end of the school day. There was always a way to ending the school day. And it was very clear. Now we're done with school. Now I'm mommy.
Right.
And now we do what we're going to do. I sit on the couch and I read to you. And then I tell you, go play in the yard, and I fall asleep because I'm exhausted.
Right.
But
Hmm.
and so there's a certain kind of closeness, and also just a knowledge of each other. We know what has happened during the day. I know
Hmm.
what's happened in their lessons. And when they say something outside of school at dinner or just, randomly, whatever we're doing, I can hear it. I can hear it resonate to the lesson in the class. I
It's
know.
wonderful.
And so I guess just a certain kind of closeness. Yeah.
That's nice. So, excuse me. Are there any kinds of misconceptions you think people have about homeschooling that you'd set straight?
About homeschooling in general. Yeah, I'll say about homeschooling in general, and then I'll say something about Waldorf.
Sure.
I think people tend to think that if the child is homeschooled, there's something wrong. You know,
Mm.
there's something wrong with them, or there's something wrong with the parent, or there's something unusual about the child. There's just something wrong, and they're not going to be socialized.
Mm.
That's the
Mhm.
basic, that's the basic, thought. How are they going to be socialized? That's the question I get all the time. How are they socialized? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't think they needed to be socialized. you know, they were social from the beginning. I mean,
Right.
babies are social from the moment they're born. They
Right.
they look you in the eye. They coordinate themselves with adults. I mean, there's a whole huge research literature on how even newborns coordinate themselves with people.
Hmm.
Human beings are social. I don't think they have to be socialized. I think they have to be supported in becoming themselves. That's a completely different thing. And so there's always, like working with that assumption. Other people are going to have that assumption that there's something wrong, that they're not really socialized, that they're going to turn out weird, that they're not going to be prepared.
Hmm.
I mean, my children didn't take standardized tests until they took the SAT. And, when they took the PSAT, the check,
Hmm.
practice thing first. And you see what the scores are on that, and you see what needs a little more work, and you work on it, And then, you take some SAT practice tests and you take the test. I mean, I don't think that standardized tests are any kind of, you know,
Training ground.
or true knowledge about anything. They're not perfect about anything. I don't even
Right.
know what they tell you. And colleges are not even requiring them this much anymore. There's
Right.
a lot of colleges that are going, we don't care about the SAT, and that's a good thing.
Hmm.
So the older one got into the University of Vermont out of state with a presidential scholarship. So she went there for 4 years in biology.
Hmm.
And she started out vet school in Glasgow and transferred to Cornell, which is number 2 in the world. Cornell
Hmm.
is number 2 in the world. And that's where she graduated from, Cornell.
Right.
And now she's about to start a residency at Virginia Tech in equine sports medicine.
Mm.
So it's not an issue of preparing, for this
Right.
some kind of huge academic thing that's going to happen. It's a question of supporting them so that they're strong, and they're self-confident, and they can use their own judgment and trust
Right.
their own judgment and trust their own observation. That's what they can have if they have the right education. And then they can
Right.
go from there. I'm not intimidated about academics either.
Right. Right. Well, how can listeners grab your book and also follow anything that you're doing?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So there's an Instagram for the Genius of Home, and there's a website, thegeniusofhome.org. And on the website, there's links to podcasts, to a webinar on Waldorf homeschooling.
Mhm.
The Instagram kind of follows along on topics in the book, and sometimes with photos, and photos of the children's work, things like that. There's links on the website for where to purchase the book, and there's also an audiobook. This I always have to remember to say. There's an audiobook that has slightly different material in it. You get to hear some of the songs being sung, things like
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And that's on Audible and Spotify. And that's also, information on the website about that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I think this was a very enlightening conversation about homeschooling, but also for anyone that had not heard, although there can't be too many people that haven't heard of the Waldorf schools and Waldorf method, but it really gives a little more, just a little more information, a little peek behind the curtain, if you will, about what it's all about, because I had heard about it and we had talked earlier about how there are, a few Waldorf schools in our area, actually. So I had heard of it when they were younger, but I didn't dive into the details of it. So it really has been fascinating to learn more about it. And so to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. I always enjoy having you. And please continue to follow us at the Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And remember too that I am offering the replay of the Parent and Purpose Summit that we hosted back in February. By popular demand, people have asked me to bring it back. That was the Family First edition. We had 3 tracks where we talked about mental health, parenting strategies, and self-care for parents. And so you can have the replay. You can get an all access pass, and you will have lifetime access to all of the interviews that we had. There were 15 speakers that were part of that summit. You can have access to their free gifts that were offered. You also get access to their bonus interviews. You get my webinar, Do You Hear Me? Staying Connected in the Chaos, along with the companion workbook. You also get a chapter from my book, Mother's Work, which talks about purpose. And so I just want you to head on over there and grab that. It really was an inspiring, informative event. And you can head over to bit.ly/FamilyFirst2023. And that's bit.ly/FamilyFirst2023. And as always, remember, it's never too late to be the parent that you want to be. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.